Hello, and welcome back to Wine with Women, where we have a lovely glass of wine and a nice chat with some excellent women, both on screen and in the comments. And today, I couldn't imagine having anyone better than Susan Smith from For Women Scotland. Welcome, Susan.
Hello, lovely to see you.
And cheers. And before we say anything else, can I say an enormous thank you from all of us to all of you at For Women Scotland. And I just wanted to mention that everyone else. So it's not just you, is it? It is you and Marion Calder and Trina Budge.
That's right.
So what I would like to sort of talk about tonight, because this is quite long form, is like some history. Because like we know the Supreme Court, we've all seen that, but it would be really nice to have an idea of how you all got together, how you met, how you set up For Women Scotland, and how you decided to take the Scottish Government to court.
Well, we started back in 2018, and there'd been an organisation in Scotland that had been looking at some of this stuff before that, but most of the people in there didn't really want to put names and faces out there because, you know, we were all scared, obviously. And after the first consultation on GRR happened in Scotland, which happened before the one in England and Wales, and that happened and it kind of went by without anybody noticing it had happened.
When did that happen? What year was that?
So that closed in March of 2018.
Okay.
So that's why some of the early meetings that you might have heard about, I think Women's Place UK came up to do one in Edinburgh, and that was one that trans activists behaved abhorrently, as they always do at that one. And there was one in Glasgow as well, where they also behaved abhorrently. I think that was one that was jointly done with Let Women Speak. And the group that existed in Scotland, I think a lot of them felt quite downhearted at that point, you know, downhearted the consultation had closed and what do we do now? And a couple of the women who were involved in that said, right, we're going to keep going. And one of them was Marion. One of them was Magdalene Burns.
Oh, and the great Magdalene Burns. Can we say cheers to her?
Cheers to her. Yeah, quite. I don't know what she'd have made of all of this.
No, absolutely. So much has happened.
So much. And so then Trina as well. I think Trina messaged Marion and said that if you don't want to give up, I don't want to give up either. And I'm going to put a band together. And so I was kicking around on Mumsnet. I was largely writing about witches and things like that. And I'd been quite open about the fact that I was in Scotland. And I got a message one night from Trina, and she and Marion and Magdalene and Nicole had this meeting in Marion's flat, and they'd said, let's do it. So Trina then started messaging everyone and said, hello, would you like to join this secret group? I felt like I was being recruited into MI5.
Oh yes, no, we've all done that with our secret groups, haven't we? Yes, our underground network.
Yeah. Oh no, it's quite late at night, and you know she's saying hello, Alice, because you know we've all got secret names, obviously.
Oh, yes.
on Mumsnet.
Hello, Turf 13265.
Yeah. So she'd got her secret name, I got my secret name, and we're messaging each other's secret names. And then she'd also got a different secret name on Facebook. So I didn't know she was called Trina for ages. And we set up this kind of, I think we got this Facebook group with about 30 of us. And we were all sitting in this Facebook group going, right, so what do we do now? What happens now? And I think I talked myself into a position of power because there was an article in the Scotsman that we were all very upset about. And I said, well, I will write a letter. And letter didn't even get published, you know, but it was a stonkingly good letter. And I sort of bashed it out in about an hour. And Trina said, gosh, you do that quickly. So, and then because Marion and I are both in Edinburgh, we went to see some MSPs together. And we'd been to see the first one, and we were sitting down having a drink afterwards. And Trina called Marion. She was worried about the Twitter account. And I said, I bet I can help with the Twitter account. So I never been on Twitter in my life. So I kind of landed myself in
a little bit of confidence will get you far.
Yeah, I'll do that. And then I think I volunteered to be the person who spoke to the press and at committee. So by the time I'd volunteered myself for all these things, I sort of ended up being, it was kind of the three of us, and then a couple of other people, obviously, who are around us, who are still very much part of it. Some of them still can't reveal their names, but there were some people who were there right from the start who we now know about.
And can we just think of this for 1 minute? There are still, no matter how far we've come, there are still women who are afraid to reveal their names. That's how strong the opposition has managed to sort of, strong arm institutions and the police. It's just, it's incredible, isn't it? It's shocking. In a way.
It is shocking. And I don't think it's so much that they're afraid, but because of the jobs they do, for whatever reason, they're in positions where they need to be seen as impartial, which is fine. But you have people who are in the same jobs who are quite happy to be far from impartial on the other side. And they're just playing the game properly. And these people are not. Yes.
What is your background? Because you're obviously very confident, and you're accomplished, and you're able to talk, and you're able to write. What is your background, just as an aside?
So I was I did English as a degree. I was at Oxford. Yeah, I was at Oxford. I went to New York. I worked on Wall Street. I worked in the City of London.
Okay.
I was doing that when the kids were little, and then I got involved in doing a lot of stuff for early years work. So I'd got an idea.
Did you give up work when you had the children?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it wasn't conducive to.
No.
And I was in the place where I was thinking of, I was about to, to start to try to go back at the time we formed For Women Scotland. And one of my friends just said to me, actually, she said, God, I wish you'd got a job in 2018, because maybe you wouldn't have all these idiots. And I said, but it's fine, I'm changing the world.
We're all very, very glad that you didn't.
I didn't get a job in 2018.
Yes, we're very glad that you didn't get a job, Susan.
My bank account is less happy about it. But
the sacrifices have been made. Very much
I'm
so.
Still waiting for the far right to pay me that check, and they haven't.
Oh, you're not getting yours?
I'm not, no. Put in a good word with Mr. Musk.
Funny that. Anyway, so that was how you all met. So then how did this crucial fight, this one singular fight that you took on, how did that happen?
So this was a piece of legislation. It's the most bonkers thing, because it's a really obscure, stupid piece of legislation. And it was called the Gender Representation on Public Boards Act. It sounds like the most boring thing in the world. I think it's a little bit like, Al Capone getting finally arrested for tax evasion.
Yes, I was thinking exactly the same thing when I was reading it. I was thinking, this is it, isn't it? This is Al Capone. Very good. Yeah.
So it passed, actually, before we were even thought of. It passed in 2018 in the January. And it was one of these pieces of legislation that there were all these arguments about the definition of women in there. And it's a long and convoluted story. But essentially what happened was that after several different changes, the people on the committee, there were about 5 MSPs on the committee, a couple of whom are pretty dedicated trans activists, decided to follow the advice of James Morton at Scottish Trans Alliance and say that a woman was anybody who identified as a woman. So this piece of legislation was supposed to be about having an equal number of men and women on public boards in Scotland. Very boring. But they said a woman is anybody who identifies as a woman. You don't have to prove anything. The test might be that you use female pronouns or have a woman's name, whatever a woman's name is. I don't know where that leaves people called Hillary or Leslie.
Yes,
yeah.
right.
But you have a woman's name, and you might have an electricity bill in that name. But you don't have to prove it. You just have to say that you're a woman. And so it was self-ID in its purest distilled form.
Yes, absolutely. And they just did this. They
did. Yeah,
put this legislation in place.
And nobody at the time in Parliament, because obviously there are a lot of women who were there at the time who were staunch, really passionate and have been brilliant, but nobody noticed this. It just slipped by completely under the radar because it was in the small print. And nobody was that far, it was a bit of a boring piece of legislation.
Yeah.
Not interested. And it went by. And one of the people who did notice it was Trina, because Trina notices everything. She has the most forensic mind, I think, of anybody I've ever met. So
interesting.
She noticed it, and she was so angry about it. And in our early days, she kept saying, I wish there was something we could do about this, because it's already set this precedent. I feel like we've already given it away. And when I went to committee to talk about the census, and Jo McAlpine was brilliant on that committee, and she gave Scottish Trans Alliance quite a hard time. But one of their arguments was, well, no, it should be self-ID in the census, and you've already put this in law with this other piece of legislation. So they were starting to use it.
Okay.
And Alec Cole-Hamilton, who was one of the people on the committee, who's the leader of the Liberal Democrats, said publicly on Facebook, oh, we've done it in advance of the fact we're going to bring in self-ID. And it ties
not
in
we're going to bring it in, not we're going to consult on it, we're bringing it in.
We're bringing it in. So it had all been set up, and then we thought we were out of time to challenge it. But in May 2020, it hadn't been introduced. Well, they did this consultation on the introduction of it. And so we then were in a position to go to lawyers, and we said, as they haven't properly implemented it yet and they're consulting on implementation, could we challenge it now? And we didn't know if we'd be able to challenge it. Well, now KC, then QC, obviously, the wonderful Aidan, said, oh, I'm not sure, but we'll give it a go. And so we did. They allowed it. The judge who allowed it said, well, I think we ought to, because this is an important topic. Okay. It's an important question.
He or she, that judge, did understand that this was important enough to allow. Okay, well, that's
so
good.
So that wasn't one of the judges who heard the case, but this was just when we put in the application to proceed. And so we had our first judicial review, which is, I think, known as For Women Scotland 1. And that was really challenging self-identification. And Aidan felt very much that was a no-brainer, because there was nothing in law that said self-identification was lawful at that stage. Annoyingly, however, we did lose the first time in the what's called the outer court of the Court of Session. So the Court of Session is the highest civil court in Scotland, but it's got the outer court, and then the appeals court is the inner court. So we appealed to the inner court and we won. And we were delighted, because this ruling, it was for Scotland, but it's also it would have been persuasive in the whole of the UK. And it said that self-identification was not lawful. One of the things they said was that measures for women, by definition, exclude biological males. So we thought,
yes, I mean, that's quite strong wording, right?
It was
nowadays.
It was really strong, and we were absolutely thrilled. We thought, oh, okay, they knocked it out the park. This is brilliant. So then the Scottish government came back with a new definition. And they said, because there was nothing in the ruling that said what the Scottish government had to do, just that they had to strike this definition. And they came back with a new one that said, well, okay, but it includes people with a GRC. So then we had to decide what to do there.
So that's, well, I mean, that's it, right? That one thing changes it all. I mean, it takes you right back to square one again, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, almost.
Also, it was a nonsense because the Scottish government were trying to bring in gender recognition reform on a self-ID basis. And their argument in Parliament was it wouldn't make any difference because getting a GRC didn't change your right of access to anywhere. And yet...
We've heard that so much, haven't we? That it's just a little bit of bureaucracy.
Just a piece of paper. It's just admin.
But we know that goes the same way as it's just pronouns. It's just pronouns. We know what it leads to. We're not stupid.
No.
And we've seen it.
So we thought we have to challenge this because, and there were people who really didn't want us to challenge it and said, but if you lose, then it's cemented in law that a GRC changes a person's sex.
That's not just people from the other side who would be gleefully saying if you lose. There was definitely some dissent from our side, and I think
that's
like yes, because it's important. A win for a win is a win for us all, but a lose is a lose for us all as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the thing was we just felt we couldn't be in a worse position because we were in this no man's land. There was Schrödinger's GRC that apparently made no difference and was just a piece of admin, but it was also the most important thing in the world, and apparently it did change your sex for the purposes of this. So we thought, okay, well, we need an answer, and if it's true that a GRC changes your sex in law, then you can't bring in self-identification as a method to get one, because then anyone can have one. And if it's really going to do that, and we kept saying all the way through GRR consultation, what do you think this piece of paper does? Do you think it changed? And there was so much waffle and obfuscation and...
But also I think there's something more important there, isn't there? Like, if this is what you were going to do, make it plain, state it plainly. Yes. Exactly. Say if you really do believe that this piece of paper makes a man a woman in law, then say it outright. Yes. Because like I've said many times, it was my pin tweet for ages that transactivism is one of the only movements that doesn't want to state what rights it's asking for on the grounds that it might incriminate itself. It wants to bring everything in under the wire. Nobody wants to state it plainly. No, there's an obvious reason for this.
Yes. So we thought we have to push them. We have to push them to say exactly what they think this does, and we have to get clarity. And then at least if we got clarity, we thought, well, we can challenge it on a basis that we all know what we're talking about. And Trina, again, because she's brilliant, when she decided to take it and she had a chat with Aidan, and he said, well, I don't think you can challenge it because I think that's what the GRA says. You've got section 9.1. And she said, section 9.3. And of course, really? Section 9.3 has become, and that is now, that's established.
So Trina had read everything to the degree that she had this idea that actually, has she got a background in law?
No, she's
forensics.
She's a mathematician who is now a farmer.
Okay, well, the farmer I can not weave into the narrative, but the mathematician, of course, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because you want everything needs to add up, and anything that isn't adding up, it's not logical. That's the key. That's the weak point. And so she really did do this. This is really amazing. Again, thank you so much, Gina.
Well, I mean, when I think on the day we won, Marion and I were in London, Trina was in Edinburgh, and I think some people from the solicitors were there. And one woman said to me afterwards that she was chatting to one of the junior solicitors, and she said, "We are all in awe of Trina. She's just amazing."
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
really nice. Well, as are we all. Can I just ask, how many times did you go to court or judicial reviews or in Scotland before you were in the Supreme Court in London?
So we did those 2 for the first one, the self-ID one, and then we did 2 on the GRC, and we lost both of those. So that was, again, the inner and the outer court in Scotland. So that was 4 times. And, at the time, I think we would have loved to have won in Scotland because we were slightly panicking. But it was a bit in for a penny, in for a pound. Right, well, we'll go to the Supreme Court. And I am really glad now that that's how it fell out, because being at the Supreme Court meant it was headline news, and it meant that it emphatically applies to the whole of the UK, and that there's
yes.
no question about
no
that.
There's no question.
So,
but
yeah.
but it was a long time to get there. How many years was that altogether?
So we started the challenge in 2020.
So that's 5 years.
5 years. Yeah.
And what kind of toll has that taken? Because every time you were knocked back so many times, told that you were wrong, or that you failed, or you couldn't have what you want, or that your arguments weren't correct. And yet you still said, no, we are right. We are going to persevere. But the pressure on you and the, I don't know, just the feeling of defeat. I mean, that must have taken a toll.
Yeah, but I think we felt we had to do it, and once we'd started, we had to keep going because we needed something concrete at the end of it. And it's been difficult. And you get, obviously you have to deal with all the rubbish and the abuse and the and it does take up so much of your time, so much.
I think as Rosie Dog 1996 has said, it's hashtag women tax. I mean, it is, isn't it? We're having to spend ridiculous amounts of time, effort, and money on this. Hugely. I mean, sometimes I think about it and I'm speechless, and I'm assuming that these are the same sort of thoughts that made you think, no, of course we're going to carry on, because it's patently absurd. It is absurd.
Yes.
This isn't sort of marginal. Oh, are we right or are we wrong? We are completely and utterly right. There is just no question that women are sex. We have our own set of, that we have our own way of moving through the world, which men do not have, and they don't even necessarily understand. And that's fine. I don't necessarily care that they don't understand, but get out of our way when we say this is a problem for us and we need this. But also, as a society, we do know that everyone understands this, because we've already had single-sex spaces for the last century. I mean, that's the insanity of it all, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're not arguing for anything new here. Sometimes people talk to me as if I've just conceived this idea of single-sex changing rooms, and they're all astounded that somebody would say, "Oh my God, let's have a space where all women can undress together." Oh, this is insane!
How unreasonable!
Yes. So I can completely understand why you could carry on. I mean, there must have been feelings of defeat, and you must have at some time thought, we're going to have to pick ourselves up and do it again. And there are going to be lots of people saying, oh, you shouldn't have done this. However, I can completely see and understand why you did. And you were right.
We were right. But, even if we'd have lost at the Supreme Court level, I was sitting, because we'd gained it. We thought, how would we win? How would we lose? And I didn't really want to think about the winning, but I was thinking about the losing. And the only way I could see we would lose, especially after the EHRC came in, and the EHRC had come in on the other side, obviously, but what they said was very helpful because they said, we think this is the law, but it's unworkable. So I thought the only way we could lose was if the court said they've created an absurdity in legislation which is not workable, and it is going to have to go and be sorted out.
I mean, this is true, isn't it? This is true. I mean, we know this. When the fact that it did have to go to the Supreme Court, and even the Supreme Court had to, and I think they did it really well, cut through all of the arguments in order to explain the sort of logical fallacies that were in there, that meant that in the end it had to come back to biological sex, that there was really no other way of interpreting it, simply because of all of the problems that it causes if it's not true. And we know this, and we've seen this, I think, firsthand.
Yeah,
we've seen it firsthand. So can I just because I really just want to know, because I was listening to it, I was at work sort of listening with my headphones, and how did you feel? Because when I first heard them say it is biological, I sort of sat there because I wasn't with everyone else. So I didn't know, like, if people were cheering or whatever. I was thinking, biological, hang on, this is right. I was like, have we won? Have they won? We've won. How did you feel when you heard the word?
Well, I felt like that because we're in court and we had to be very serious and quiet. And I was sitting next to Marion and it was absolutely packed. And when they said that, we sort of grabbed hands, and I looked at her, and it was have we, and then we both sort of went, okay, but because I said at that point, and we both compared notes afterwards, and we were both waiting for the but.
I was waiting for the but. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I think we may have won, but.
And I know in Edinburgh, because they had a screening in Edinburgh, for some of the women who helped and supported over the years, that there was 70 of them, I think, at this screening, and Trina was there. And
that's amazing.
It was incredible. And I got a bit of FOMO when I saw it afterwards, because they could make a noise, obviously.
Yes.
So when they said biological sex, they're all going berserk and screaming and cheering.
Yes, I saw. Yes,
but we were a bit like
other
that.
People knew. Yeah. If you're not with it, if you're not with everyone else, you still second guess, don't you? You're like, oh, really?
You do. And I didn't want to get to it. And then when he started reading out, when he said they allowed the appeal, I was like, okay, that means we've won. And then he started reading out the headlines. And I was like, this is brilliant. This is amazing. And I turned around, and there was a row of the lesbian interveners behind me, all the LGBT.
Can I just say, the phrase lesbian interveners is superb.
So good. And I turned around and I looked at them, and they're all going, patting me on the back, and they're going, no, as far as we could within the court. But I was, and then when, we all stood up, the judges walked out, and the minute they'd walked out, everybody just erupted and started clapping. And
well, yes,
so
as they should, and as we all did. I was at work. I was telling my colleagues. I mean, my colleagues have an inkling of my thoughts on this, because it turns out that most of them do. However, I couldn't keep it in. I was like, we've just won, and obviously because I work on the trading floor, so there's TVs all around us, and I was saying it's going to be up there in a bit. It's going to be up there in a bit, and there was a bit of news coverage that came up, and I was thinking, there they are. This is amazing. Yeah. No, it was a brilliant day. And I was lucky enough to have been invited to the after party. Although, the party was termed as whatever happens, you know, we
Well,
will go and
yeah.
support.
Because it was either we were all going to sit there and drown our sorrows,
Yes,
or we were
yes.
and thankfully, and it was amazing. It was so great, and it was so great to be with all these people who, you know, obviously.
Well, and a lot of people
You've
there
been-
had, you know, well, and everywhere. I mean, I don't want to say, oh, a lot of people there had spent their time and energy, because honestly, it's like it's just sort of normal women who've spent their time and energy. We've
Yes.
like, written letters, gone to schools, you know, trudged around, sort of just read and read and read. I feel as a group of women, we have learned so much. I've learned so much more about the law, the, you know, just
medicine,
Parliament, how things work. You know, we're all sort of, we're all just sort of talking about the courts and then the appeals, and you know, we sort of have some idea of how. I do feel as if I've been sort of allowed a sort of a view into public life, how really civil society works, which I hadn't really sort of understood before, because I had just, you know, gone to school, gone to university, gone also into the city, and just worked, you know, and had kids and gone to schools, but I hadn't really had any idea about how the sort of, you know, how laws are made, how society actually works. And it has been quite shocking, because
it's shocking as well how easy it is to subvert civil society.
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's especially the case in Scotland, that there was so much capture, and it had happened without anyone noticing. And you know, it's still been unravelled.
Yes. I know that I shouldn't be possibly asking this, but am I allowed to ask, how much influence did J.K. Rowling have, or how much input did she have to this? And you don't have to answer if we're not allowed to talk about it.
I mean, she gave us a really generous donation for the court case, but it's funny because people sort of think that she's, you know, there are trans activists who reply to our account who clearly think that she is running the account. She wouldn't find time to write her enormous books if she was running our account, frankly.
No. Most people are aware that this isn't true.
But you know, it's been wonderful to have her public support, obviously, because she is such a brilliant person and she's got such a huge profile. All the decisions, though, everything we do, that's we've taken those decisions. And she has been, as I say, probably, you know, she was incredibly generous in donating to the crowd funder for the cases. But there were a lot of other women, and I think she would be the first person to say that this was very much at that, you know, all that funding was a team effort.
Yes, yes, it was. Yes, it was. And honestly, you know, and I do think that, as you say, I think a lot of people do think, I mean, probably not so much the women on our side, but a lot of maybe detractors do believe that J.K. Rowling is running the show. But I'm absolutely certain that, you know, all of the hard work was down to all of you. Just normal women, isn't it? That we've put.
It is, and you know, I think, you know, and we are at a point, because it looks like we're going to have to keep going and everything else. We didn't raise funding for ourselves because we knew we got these big court cases, and we raised all the money we raised up until now has gone into that. We are at a point where we probably will have to go out and ask people if they will fund us. But it's very ironic because there are a lot of people who think we've been paid not just by J.K. Rowling, but they think, you know, we've been paid by Trump and Putin and the Taliban in some instances. And we haven't. But you know,
people do love the narrative of the evil villains, the evil rich villains, don't they?
You know, we are going to have to. There's only so long you can keep going as a sort of voluntary organisation, and have found in recent week, people are wanting you to do things, and they think that we're a professional organisation, and we're not. And we're trying to run to keep up.
Actually, that is a good point, isn't it? Because I guess some people, and I hadn't really thought about it, but after your win, I guess you look upon you differently. You think, oh well, now they are suddenly, for some reason, you do think that we've now become a professional organisation with lots of, but that's not true. You're just still women who are sort of doing things from your lounge.
Yeah, and I think we said, Marion and I were interviewed by Hadley Friedman, which was amazing. We love her, and I think I said in that interview, we'd like an office. We'd like an office space. And I think we would like to be able to, Trina's still trying to run her business. Marion's working. I have no source of income at the moment. So, it's either we have to do something about this, or we stop. And I don't think we want to stop.
No,
now,
because again,
that's
a good point, isn't it? Because the money that you've raised, this is money for the court cases. But actually, other people are allowed to have jobs and live. Their sort of, their time is spent at work, and they can take the money. But you've done this, you've decided to go on all out and do these things for women, and you're not getting paid. You can crowdfund for the lawyers, etc., but for yourselves, that is actually interesting. I hadn't really thought about it even myself. But
I think
So is this?
We'll try.
So this leads us on to maybe what is next. Oh, actually, I wanted to talk about Under My Umbrella, Ella, Ella, hey, 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 hey. So Thursday. Tell us about Thursday. What happened, Susan?
So Thursday was supposed to be a protest. It was a brilliant protest. It was a great protest. It was.
What was it? What was it for?
So we are getting a bit fed up with the Scottish government, because obviously we won 20 weeks ago. We won, and the EHRC has said to the Scottish government, just get on with it, implement the ruling. They have teams of lawyers. They know what the law is. They can crack on. And they have so far refused to withdraw guidance on several aspects of public life, but we were particularly focused on the ones on schools and hospitals, which have been unlawful since we won the first judicial review, because they're all based on self-ID.
So they've not withdrawn it.
No.
Have they said that they're waiting for the EHRC guidance?
They've said they're waiting for the guidance, that they've got working groups looking at it, that they're considering it, blah, blah, blah. And we've been back and forth with them, with ministers. We've been back and forth with the EHRC. The EHRC got quite cross with the Scottish government, because the Scottish government said to us, the EHRC told us to wait. So we said, apparently you told them to wait. And they said in the polite EHRC way, but it basically translated as "did we buggery?" And so we said, you were not told. So we have, and I think they thought we'd take them back to judicial review, which is time consuming and it's costly. But because we have Trina and we have Aidan, so they have this clever ruse. And they've put in an order for reduction, which it simply means that you say this is unlawful and it has to be quashed. It doesn't say anything about what they have to replace it with, just these things are unlawful and it needs to be quashed. So we put that in August. They had 21 days to respond. That ran out yesterday. And so we thought we'll have the protest on Thursday. And the protest was titled "Women Won't Wait," because obviously we've had "Women Won't Wait," so now our women won't wait. And we said they need to get on with it. We're fed up of waiting. Get on with it. And it was the protest itself was brilliant. We had big crowds as always.
Yeah, there was a lot of people with there.
loads of people, and we had, great cross-party support. We had lots of MSPs. We had the deputy leaders of both the Scottish Conservatives and Scottish Labour speaking in support, and it was really good. But unfortunately, some git turned up with his travelling disco, and we had written to Police Scotland and the Parliament Security in August and said, this man is threatening to turn up. He plays music really loud. He's abusive. He's been involved in altercations before. He stood outside Filia. And can I swear I'm quoting him?
Yeah, you can swear.
Excellent. And there are all these women lining up for Filia, and there are speakers coming from places like Afghanistan. There are women talking about genital mutilation, and as they're going in, he's going, "Fuck you, fuck you," and he's so horrible that even moved Humza Yousaf, who was a bit wet on all of this, to say we condemn this, and this is not what people should be saying. I remember that.
I mean, it's outrageous, isn't it? And it's deliberately meant to intimidate women.
Yes.
Because again, part of this whole thing is this idea that if you say, oh no, it's women who are there protesting against women. This isn't true. It's very, very important that people understand that it is men who, this guy, a lot of the trans activists are men, and they are threatening. It's threatening. No, this is why we need single sex spaces in the first place, because men are bigger than women and more aggressive.
The entertaining thing is he's blasting out that it's cis men who are the problem, and I'm looking at him going, well, that's you.
Well, that's you, mate. Yeah,
you, mate. So he turned up. He parked his car in a disabled bay. He's not disabled. Got his stuff out. I mean, I've been sent photos. I know he parked in a disabled bay. He got all his big things out. Police Scotland let him be right next to the people, right next to where we were. But actually, he was in between us, and there was another event going on the other side. And they were talking about children killed in Gaza. They were reading names out. Now, the organisers of that have said that because we're evil and they're happy with him doing that. But actually, a lot of the people who were there, who were just there, actually have said to us that they did not like having to read these names out over this man who's blaring.
Whether you agree with what people are protesting or not, they do have a right to have to speak. And the idea that he's got a right to protest, yes, it's true, but just deliberately drown people out. Well, it's just bad form, isn't it?
It was heckler's veto. It was a deliberate attempt to deny Article 11 rights. And Menno had gone over to film him, and I was with Menno, and I walked up and I said, you might not care about us, but you are also next to these people, and it's quite disrespectful, actually.
Yes, it is. Yes,
whatever your views on, and it would have been, to my mind, it would be the same. Whichever conflict, whichever side we are talking about the victims.
I totally agree.
Victims of conflict. And I said, that's really disrespectful. Why are you doing this? And you can see me on the film. I was pointing over at them. And he started waving his umbrella around. He got this rainbow umbrella, which apparently is an LGBT umbrella. I didn't know umbrellas had a sexuality or a gender identity, but apparently his does.
That's part of the plus. That's part of the plus, Susan.
He was waving it around. It had this spiked tip on it like that.
It did. I saw it. I've seen it in the pictures. I've seen it in the video. Yeah.
Yeah. And it might not have been poisoned. I might not have been the next Markov, but I didn't really want that in my eye either. And so he waved it in my face. And also we're on there are ponds around outside Holyrood.
Yes.
So I was yay far from water. So I didn't want to step back. So I just grabbed it and pushed it away. And he did this huge performative thing. And I thought, what the hell is he doing? And he went, and I just walked off. The next thing I know, he's got one of the, and he was obviously trying to attract the police's attention with the, he got one of the police, he's pointing at me. And you can see from the pictures, I am not short. I'm about 5'7". Most of the men in my family are just over, 6'1", 6'2". He massively taller than them. He's huge. He was trying to get the police to come and talk to me. And the police were a bit like, and one of them said to me, he says he feels unsafe.
Well, he can say that, but you can make a judgment call.
I mean, I don't think the police were entertaining it, but they were just a bit like, and the photographers went up to them and said, we've got it on film. I now think what I should have done, or I wouldn't do it, because I'm not an arsehole. But if I were like him, what I should have done is I should have done a massive football fall backwards, maybe into his sound system.
Maybe,
I don't know.
or maybe even stepped into the water if you were prepared.
And started screaming, I've been assaulted.
Yes, and possibly we're going to drown.
But the funny thing is, because he's got this blinking rainbow flag, you can see on the pictures that I battered away the red, yellow side of his umbrella. And it's the blue-green side that is broken. And it was broken before I went near it.
Hoist by your own petard of the rainbow colours. No, it's fantastic, because you can see it very, very clearly that it's, it's already broken.
So I'm now waiting for 5 armed guards, policemen to turn up and arrest me, because
oh, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, however, what happens next?
Yes. So next, we lay a summons on Monday morning about this guidance. And
this is a summons to the Scottish government.
And they have 7 days to put their argument in. And then we take them to court again.
Again.
They've still not paid us for the last time, so their bills are rationing up.
Hang on, so they owe you money.
They owe us money.
Did they have to pay the court costs?
Yeah.
And they haven't paid?
Not yet.
How? Well, why not? They're the Scottish government. They've got money, right?
Well, I think we have to agree it. But I don't know whether.
But this is an interesting point in itself that I hadn't thought about. So the Scottish government, they're going to have to pay your costs, but this is taxpayers' money, isn't it? They have rashly decided that they are going to challenge, or they're not going to take your challenge. They're going to carry on going for this self-ID by the back door, and it's costing the whole of Scotland money.
Yeah. And people who supported us, they've paid money, and then the taxpayers have paid for the Scottish government, and now the Scottish government are having to reimburse it, and now they're spending more money. It is outrageous,
and they still haven't learned, and they are still not backing down.
And actually, one thing that they probably don't realise, but it's a serious point, is that it is possible to take to charge politicians for criminal offences if they've been willfully negligent in office. And I'm not sure they realise that, or they should realise that. But if politicians deliberately set out to disregard or disobey the law, you can actually go after them on criminal charges.
No. This is, I think, sort of brings us back to what we sort of started with, which is how much we have all learned. Now, I'm sure that in your previous life, even in Wall Street, you didn't really know that politicians could be held liable if they refused or willfully sort of, or flagrantly, I suppose, went against what you think that the spirit of the law was. And I do think that this is an important point. I do think that as a society, we should be able to just make sound judgments, that we don't need it all written down, that we don't look and we say, oh, look, actually, we don't really understand what a woman is, and therefore we need somebody to tell us. We need the courts to tell us. I mean, you had to actually get that done, but really, everyone fucking knows.
Yeah, and we shouldn't have to be constantly taking them back to court and back to the law to get them to obey the law, because politicians, civil servants, everyone who works in that parliament, they have an obligation to follow the law. They can't just choose to pick out which bits they fancy that day. And what's really interesting is that the Scottish Parliament body, which is kind of and there are a few MSPs on that body, and they're responsible for the Parliament buildings. And as soon as the judgment came out, they immediately moved to make the toilets in the Parliament single sex or a third space that was gender neutral. And they did that straight away. And the reason for that is that they know, I mean, actually, some of the MSPs on that body are brilliant, and they would do that anyway because they've been wonderful.
Oh, that's nice.
But
it's good to know.
One of the MSPs on that body is Maggie Chapman, who was, shouting her head off about the bigoted Supreme Court, and yet this apparently was unanimous, so she agreed to it. Well, why did she agree to it? Because she could have stuck her neck out and said, no, I won't do this is terrible. And I think the reason is because they do know on that body that they are personally liable.
Oh, that is interesting, isn't it?
So you can imagine if they'd all agreed,
and she had not.
Half of them had agreed, and a couple hadn't, and Chapman hadn't, and they managed to swing it. I don't know. I don't know if that's what's going through their heads, but I think as soon as people start to think, actually, I might be responsible for this. Well, a little bit more.
I mean, to be honest, I feel the same a little bit about people calling the police. If there was some form of jeopardy in making an obviously false report, I think we'd be in probably a much better space than we are now, because you've got people who can who can say, oh, look, she's harassed me because she's broken my umbrella, and possibly get, as you say, 5 armed policemen turning up at the airport for you. But those people, there's no downside. Like I see it on Twitter. People at the Metropolitan Policing, because I've said, men don't have the human right to undress with women and girls, and you're like somebody, this is taking people's time. I mean, I'm sure the Metropolitan Police do have a Twitter. They do actually go through their Twitter account, and there should be some form. There should be a downside to just doing this, because it's so unequal as it is.
It is. And I do think the whole thing on Thursday, that because we told them, because this man is a repeat offender, and as somebody said, there's a link, I think Gethin put it up, to report him for harassment, because I think it does reach that threshold. He is following certain women around just to harass them. And I think the police needed to have taken action on that. And I think, the fact that he then decided to try and complain about us was a bit like this. You've come to create a problem. You've come to create an issue. And it was, and I've seen so much nonsense today on social media, the lies that are told about us, and sometimes it does get upsetting that people
yes absolutely
run around making up. Apparently, we were screaming abuse at people. No, we've never done that.
No,
we've never done that.
No, because you know what? Because we don't. We've got an agenda that we want to just get done, so that we can actually just get back on with our lives. This isn't something that we wanted. This isn't something that we want to do to spend our time for notoriety or fame or, you know, disruption or rebellion. We actually would quite like to go back to normal life. Like all of us. I mean, I know there have been some silver linings, which is, you know, we've, like I said, you know, we've all learned about the law and we've met the most amazing other women. You know, I don't want to say you know, I'm so glad it happened, because it's been such a terrible thing for society at large, you know, and it's almost completely broken democracy. So I don't want to go so far as to say I'm kind of glad it happened. However, there are some silver linings in it. You know, we've met each other. We've learned new skills. We've pushed ourselves further than we could ever have thought possible. I think.
And I think you learn that, you know, for all the progress, because you look across the last century and the people and obviously when we were younger, rape in marriage was still legal. My husband's grandmother was a divorcee in the 1950s, could not get her own property without her husband and her brother signing off on her mortgage.
And her brother.
Because that's, you know, and I think we forget,
We do.
And this is what I think about young women. They forget how new and risky and fragile all this is. And that is why some of these men want to drive a wedge between older women and these young women, because I think some of them think, well, you know, it's all sorted, yay, and we've got to be kind to people. And they don't realize that they will be right back at the back of the queue. I mean, Joanne Lamont, who is just brilliant, I love to bits, and she's obviously on Byra's Place with me. And that is, by the way, when we talked about Jo earlier, J.K. Rowling earlier, I wanted to say, you know, the big thing she did was set up Byra's Place, which has been phenomenal.
I've got that in my notes to ask, but sorry, I'm glad you brought it
up. Joanne said, you know, back when she started out in politics, the men would say things like, oh, you know, we'll have to sort out world socialism before we can deal with, you know, women's issues. And that's the thing, that it was, unless women stand up for it, we are always at the back of the queue.
Yes.
Because they're never voluntarily going to give us stuff.
I think what you've said there about young women, it is fragile. It is so fragile. And this is what we've all learned. I genuinely thought, you know, I was kind of sort of trailblazing in computer science at work, and, you know, it was great because I could just go in and I could do it. And, you know, we were like, women could go in now, and it was great and it was nice.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then 10 years later, I'm looking around and I'm thinking, you know, what's happening? It's been really shocking. I think that's the one big thing that we will all take away from this, is that we will never rest on our laurels again. No. Never. You know, we are vigilant. Anyway, Susan, it has been marvelous to have you. I've enjoyed myself so much, and the comments have been absolutely fantastic.
That's loads.
And so many familiar names. You know, I see like Cara Dansky, I just everyone.
Oh, lovely Cara.
I'm so pleased that you've all come back to support Wine with Women, despite the fact that I've been off air for quite some time. No, it's absolutely brilliant. And Susan, thank you so much for both coming to tell us the long form story and for everything that For Women Scotland has achieved.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Oh,
and I finished my glass.
Well, I did. I don't know if you saw. I texted my husband and said, "Get the dog and bring more wine." Anyway, thank you to everyone who joined in. And tune in again next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.